One of the things that everyone loves to do in fighting games is to rank all the characters and create tier lists. Not only is it fun to discuss why you think one character is better than another, but it also gets people to be more reflective about the game. This is especially the case in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, with its whopping roster of 80 characters, and even more on the way. But how do we determine these rankings? Well, there's a lot of factors, but the main ones tend to be the tournament results that a character garners, along with the gameplay attached to those results, and theory crafting, a catch-all term for brainstorming. Whether you're brainstorming really specific and niche situations, or brainstorming how a character should play in general. In other words, experience and reason, although it's worth noting that theory crafting is also influenced by actually playing the game, so it also has some aspects of experience. But which one matters more? Well, according to empiricists like Locke, results and experience in general would matter the most, while rationalists like Leibniz would argue that the theory crafting matters more. So let's take a look at some of their arguments. According to Leibniz, all knowledge is innate. In terms of Smash Bros., we can think of this as the idea that we can work out how to play just by looking at the quote-unquote numbers of the game. Armed with the movesets of every single character, we can reason out which character is best. We wouldn't necessarily need to experience the game in order to understand it, as knowledge is innate. Now, this argument isn't quite fairly represented within the realm of video games, a very specialized niche within our reality. However, I think an applicable analogy would be that someone who has played the previous games of the series would have some innate knowledge of the game, such as the basic fundamentals of the game, basic mechanics, and even how certain characters might work without ever playing Smash Bros. Ultimate itself. On the other hand, Locke's argument is that nothing is innate, and people are born tabula rasa, like blank slates. In other words, in order to gain actual knowledge of the game, you need to play it. Even though someone who has played Smash Bros. 64 might have some idea of how Smash Ultimate will likely work, they won't have any true knowledge until they actually play the game. So which one is right? Well, beyond the impracticalities of metaphors, the practicality of Leibniz's argument falls apart when you consider human limitations, which lead to the idea of an evolving meta. In other words, as time goes on, the general tendencies regarding characters and strategies is going to change as people start to learn new things through experience. I think the best example of this would be King K. Rool. Before the game even came out, it was revealed that King K. Rool would have a mechanic where his belly would have super armor on many of his attacks, about a third of his moveset to be exact. For those who don't know, super armor is a mechanic that allows you to get hit by an attack without flinching, thus allowing you to practically ignore it. A huge advantage to have, since it can allow you to beat out pretty much anything. Upon hearing this, and even after seeing some gameplay footage, everyone, and I do mean everyone, thought that King K. Rool would be one of the best characters in the game. After all, it was not unheard of for attacks to have super armor, but these tended to be strong yet slow and situational moves such as Donkey Kong's headbutt, or Donkey Kong's famed DK punch, which takes about 3 full seconds to fully charge. Super armor is not the sort of thing that a character would have on a third of their moveset. It was also revealed that King K. Rool would have a recovery that could go exceptionally far, with the really big hitbox protecting above him to boot. This only fed even further into the thought that K. Rool would be top tier. The addition of what looked like strong projectiles, exceptionally good killing power, and a down throw that could vary only made him look even stronger. And people believed this at first when the game actually came out. K. Rool appeared at the top of many people's tier lists, and then a few weeks passed by. He dropped into the mid-tier, and given a bit more time, low tier, and now he currently resides in the bottom tier, amongst the worst characters in the game. What happened? How did the King of the Kremlins fall so freaking far? Well, Nintendo did technically nerf him, weaken some aspects of his moveset, but I can assure you that was not the cause of this huge decline. No, what happened was that people were able to play the game, and when they did, they realized that K. Rool's gimmicks were just that. Gimmicks. They realized that if you just play around his shenanigans, he can't actually do much. Sure, he can tank attacks with his super armor, but his moveset is also too slow for him to be able to contend with the rest of the roster. And while one could technically see this by looking at his frame data, the numbers that correspond to the speed of his attacks, took this experience of playing around him for people to realize that he only had low-level gimmicks. So does this mean that experience is more important? Well, not really. Even though reason alone couldn't accurately place King K. Rool in the early tier lists, people's initial experiences with K. Rool also led to the same conclusion until everyone started thinking of counterpoint. In other words, experience without reason, or reason without experience, both fail to leave room for the growth that takes place in an evolving meta. This is the same idea that Kant had, the idea that we constitute our own world through both central experience and reasoning. Our senses provide the information that our minds interpret, creating a process that cannot happen if either one is missing. And it's through this process that we're able to evaluate every single character and create a tier list. Now that we're on the topic of Kant, I will end off with his idea of transcendental idealism. The idea that there are certain truths that are both necessary and universal. These can be thought of as definitions. In Smash Bros., these would be the game's most basic mechanics, such as how you beat your opponent by launching them off the screen, or how you get launched further as your percent racks up. Based on these fundamental truths, we now have a basis for our knowledge. And from there, we can then start to gain new knowledge, which in turn allows us to pass judgment on each character. For instance, to give a very generalized example, knowing that you want to damage your opponent and then knock them off the top or the sides, we can then come to the conclusion that the characters that can deal damage fast and or kill earlier are going to be better, and the characters that have good tools for avoiding damage will also be good. So to answer the main question one final time, how do we know the rankings for each character in Smash Bros? Through a combination of experience and reasoning built off of universal truths, we arrive at something that looks like this.